Welcome to another math lesson with me, Miss Tamal. I'm excited for you to grab your gas, for you to grab your keys, and for us to get started and take off with multiplicative comparison. In order to do so today, you will need 3 materials. 1 will be your pencil. 2 will be your lesson packet. Again, your math lesson packet, and it is on page 7 where we will begin. I will show you what page 7 looks like in a moment, but you're turning to page 7. And then lastly, you'll need your marble notebook so we can take some notes. Once you have all of those materials today, that's your gas, you'll need your key, and guess what? That is you, because you are the one who's going to be open to learning something new today. So let's continue as we start to learn more about how to represent multiplicative comparisons. Let's start with a review first. So what do you already know about multiplicative comparisons? I'm going to give you a chance to practice saying that word. So my turn first. Multiplicative comparison. Your turn. Shine. Really great work. You're going to crush learning how to say this new term. So talk to me. What did you say? I love how this friend is starting already with what has changed about multiplication. You know, you've learned that multiplication can represent equal groups. It can represent area models. It can represent arrays. In 4th grade, we're adding on to that toolkit, and we just learned that multiplication can represent a comparison between 2 quantities. Great, so now when we talk about this comparison, in multiplication, we use the term multiplicative comparison. Talk to me about what the factors and also the product within that equation represents. Ooh, you remember that first factor. So the first factor in a multiplication equation can represent the number of times greater one amount is than another. So in short, we can say the first factor represents the times as many, or that relationship between the greater and lesser amount. So now talk to me about the second factor. What can it represent as a convention? Ding, ding, ding. You are rocking it out. So when we think about the second factor in a multiplication equation, it can represent the lesser amount. Your turn? Nice. Now what about the product? Yes, I'm so proud of you. It can represent the greater amount. Shine, we just crushed that first portion of our review. But as we know, mathematicians are flexible. So as flexible mathematicians, we know that we can represent multiplicative comparison as T times L equals G as a rule or as a convention. But changing the order, operation, and position around the equal sign does not matter much as long as the relationship between the quantities remains the same. As long as the relationship between the quantities remains the same. Nice job really pointing that out. I'm going to give you an opportunity to press pause so that you can copy down this big idea on your packet or in your notebook, and you'll be able to have it. When you're ready, press play to continue. So now let's continue. So we've also talked about the difference between additive comparison and multiplicative comparison. So what did you remember about what additive comparison is, and then what's similar and different between the 2 types of comparisons? I love how you're so ready for a challenge. Yes, these are new math terms, and we're starting to be able to know which times and opportunities we can apply them. So start with additive comparison. Okay, now you build on. Talk to me about multiplicative comparison. What is it? Nice. Now, you started mentioning how they're similar. I would love to hear from you. How are they different? Wow, we have geniuses in this room. So here's how we're going to put it all together. Additive comparison is a comparison, and it's a comparison between a greater and lesser amount, but it uses addition or subtraction to find the difference between these 2 amounts. So we use addition or subtraction to find the difference, or we can also say the relationship between those two amounts. Multiplicative comparison is also a comparison, and it also has a greater and lesser amount. But the key difference here is that when we think about the relationship between the two, it is a certain number of times greater, or it could be a certain number of times lesser. We'll stick with greater in the 4th grade context. So you would use multiplication or division to find out how many times greater or lesser one amount is than another. Lock it in because you'll use it in a moment. So right now we're going to go ahead and practice a little bit of how do we draw models, or even how do we write a verbal statement when we are given an equation. So for each equation, write a verbal statement. Grab your marble notebook because this is a great place to write it. Write your verbal statement. Here's our next example. Write your verbal statement. Last example, write your verbal statement. Great, let's now review. So this first one says 6 times 2 equals 12. Let's see how to write that with multiplicative comparison language. We can write that verbal statement as 6 times as many as 2 is 12. Give yourself a check if you have it, and if not, it's okay. You're still learning. You can edit it. This one looked a little different, but I loved how some of us said, I'm not scared. Okay, so how did you write that one? Yes, 8 is 4 times as many as 2. Remember, your equal sign can be on the left or it can be on the right. Last one. 7 times as many as 5 is 35. Give yourself a check if you had those last two, and if not, take a moment to pause to edit. All right, it is now time to pump it up. Pump it up. All right, so now we're gonna go to a do now part 2. This time, I'm going to give you the verbal statement and you're going to draw a diagram to match. 15 is 3 times as many as 5. And 9 times as many as 4 is 36. Press pause, draw your diagram, and then we'll press play to review. All right, let's start with the first one. 15 is 3 times as many as 5. What is the lesser amount? I started at a different place within the equation to see if you can point it out. Yes, in this verbal statement or the equation that I'm coming up with in my head, the lesser amount is 5. What is the times as many? Yes, that relationship here is 3 times as many. And then what was our product or our GA? Yes, it's 15. So let's see what that looks like in a diagram. Perfect. I chose to switch it up. Did you? Oh, yes. I can have the lesser amount over here, or you can have the lesser amount on the bottom as long as you keep the relationship the same. So you see it's 1, 2, 3 copies of the lesser amount to show how many times greater the greater amount is than the lesser amount. Talk to me about the second one. I also chose to switch it up. This was a lot. The times as many were so many, but I really tried my best to make sure they were all the same size to show that each one of these copies within our times as many statement is a copy of our lesser amount as we come up with our greater amount. Shine to you all because you are learning something new and I see that you are crushing it. Keep it up. It is time now to get on our marks and get ready. So let's move on. So get set. Here's your task. You have 2 story problems that represent comparisons. You'll have 7 minutes to read each story problem, consider the type of comparison, and represent it using a model. As you represent, think, how are your models similar and different? This is going to be your opportunity to use a lot of the big ideas that we reviewed during our review. So this is what your page 7 will look like. You will see that it says draw a model and write an equation with a letter to represent the unknown in the statements below. And you'll see 2 different problems about any. I can't wait to see how you represented these with a model and then also your equation. I'm not going to give everything away. Alrighty, good. So now it is time to review. How are you? Let's go ahead and tell me your number sentence for the first one. I'll go back and put the problem here. What number sentence did you write? Nice. I love that you wrote the number sentence 3 times 4 equals 12 because you realize that the times as many as 3, and if Annie is 4, it looks like she's younger. And so that's 3 times 4, and Roger is older, so he is representing our greater amount. Great job also using your schema to help you identify that relationship. Talk to me about the second problem. What number sentence did you write? Yes, I love how you're telling me more that you use this clue around older. So the number sentence that you wrote, I'm going to just repeat it back for our friends here, was 4 plus 3 equals 7. Similarly, if you switch the add-ins order, so you did 3 plus 4 equals 7, that was also fine. Nice job. So now let's go ahead and look at our models. How are your models similar and different? Here are my models. That was our models for the first problem. What type of comparison is that? Yes, a multiplicative comparison. Nice job. You can go ahead and label that problem right over here with an MC for short. Now talk to me, what type of problem was this one? Additive comparison. Nice. Go ahead and right here in the same spot, label it AC. Let's check out the model. Wow, it looks a little bit different, but let's notice how did we show some of the similar information, and then also how are they different? There are some lines on page 7. Go ahead and write out your thoughts and then we'll review. Okay, so let's hear them. How are they similar and different? Let's talk about similar first. So we noticed we can use a tape diagram to represent both additive comparison and multiplicative comparison. That's what these diagrams are called. Nice. Now, what was different? Yes, I love how you captured already that we saw that this one included copies. And so those bars are separated to show that copy versus this bar is all together because it's not a copy. It is completely just representing the greater amount. So let's stamp that difference. For additive comparison, we represent with a tapegram that has a continuous length to represent the lesser amount or the greater amount. But multiplicative comparison requires us to use or to represent the lesser amount, we see it here, as one tape diagram, and then the greater amount as a tape diagram that's made up of multiple copies of the lesser amount. And you can see that in how I tried to keep them the same size and show that they were representing the same amount. Nice job. Give yourself a round of applause because you just did 2 different types of comparisons side by side to compare and contrast. Lock that in because now we're going to have an opportunity to fuel our gas tanks a little bit more. So we're going to look at the next activity starting on pages 8. And so you will continue to represent multiplicative comparisons. Here is your task. If you are given statements, your task is to create a model and an equation. You can use tape diagrams, but you can also draw pictures if you want. If you are given equations, your task is to create a model and write a statement. You could write a story with a real world context, or you can write it without context, such as 12 is 3 times as many as 4. Lastly, if you are given models, your task is to write a statement and an equation. So if the model has context, you need to write a statement with that context. But if there is no context as in no story context, you can just write it without context, such as 12 is 3 times as many as 4. So to summarize all of your steps for your next task, you're pretty much just going to think, what form am I given? Am I given a model? Am I given an equation? Or am I given a verbal statement? And then from there in the workspace, you're going to make sure that you do the other 2 forms. So if you have a statement, draw a model and an equation. If you have an equation, draw a model and write a statement. And then if you have a model, write an equation and a statement. This way you're going to be so flexible because you'll know how to represent multiplicative comparison in 3, Mr. Mom, your fingers, in 3 different ways. So if you're like our friends here, getting ready to go, making sure they have all of the requirements necessary and all of what they need, go ahead and take some time to pause this video and start your work or rev your engine. I'll be back when you're ready to press play. Alrighty, so all of that work, let's put it all together now and think about our checkpoint. What did we learn about multiplication today? Yes, we learned that multiplication can represent a comparison between 2 amounts, and we can write it formally as T times L equals G, of course, as a convention because we can always be flexible. Talk to me about the first factor. It represents the times as many. Ding, ding, you got it. Talk to me about the second factor. Yes, it represents the lesser amount. You know what's coming next. What about the product? It represents the greater amount. Bonus question. What are the different ways we can represent multiplicative comparison? You practiced all of them today. Yes, really great job. We can use equations, verbal statements, and diagrams. Wow, you're shining bright. So now let's head over to our exit ticket. You will now have 10 minutes to use all of what you've learned representing multiplicative comparison in 3 different forms, and also thinking about the differences between multiplicative comparison and additive comparison to complete your exit ticket on pages 10 and 11. All right, I cannot wait to see how much you've rocked it out and check that work. You have earned a cheer, and it is the Hulk chair. It is one of my favorites. Get ready. You're incredible, like the Hulk. I will see you next time. And so remember, not everything in life you will speed through. Sometimes when you are first learning something, you have to take it slow. And that is perfectly okay. You are still brilliant. You are still beautiful or handsome. You are still amazing. And you will eventually get faster. See you next time.